So who remembers net neutrality? You guys remember net neutrality? I often forget about net neutrality. That's how not big of a deal this whole net neutrality discussion was. 4 years ago, the FCC, under the leadership of Ajit Pai, decided to repeal net neutrality, and a lot of people lost their fucking minds. You had politicians like Ro Khanna. This was like a big sentiment that, without net neutrality, these big greedy corporate ISPs, they might decide which websites you get to visit. They might play favorites, and one example that was used a lot. I think I remember Phil DeFranco using this. I remember Phil DeFranco just freaking out about this in general, urging his viewers to call their Congress, call their representative, write letters to Ajit Pai to make your voice heard, tell them that you want net neutrality to stay. But yeah, he was using Comcast as an example. Comcast is big in the internet service providing industry. Comcast also owns large media networks, entertainment networks like NBC, Universal. So at the time, this was before Peacock Network came out officially. But a lot of people were saying like, whoa, here's one example. Comcast, they might decide, if they have now the legal authority to throttle certain streaming services, throttle certain websites, they might decide, hey, we have our Peacock Network, we have our NBC Universal app, which we're going to give preferential treatment to. We're going to give them favors because it's our company, and we're going to give that them the fast lane, what they call the internet fast lane. But if you're a Netflix, if you're a YouTube, if you're an HBO Max, if you're a Disney Plus, Paramount Plus, we might just throttle you. We might charge you more money, make you pay more money to reach those websites. It was articulated in this meme, as you can see. Like right now, you just pay $55 a month, and there's no throttling, there's no extra charges. But without net neutrality, they're going to charge you $18 a month to watch video and $10 a month to check your fucking email. Charge you an extra $15 a month for game. They're just going to keep charging, folks. And now it's 4 years later. 4 years later, and have things went the way people like Ro Khanna, people like Secular Talk, people like Phil DeFranco, and many others. Jimmy Kimmel was making a big fuss about this. Jimmy Kimmel was making a big fuss about the repeal of the repeal of net neutrality. Woo!
Meanwhile, the Federal Communications Commission, the FCC, did something absolutely despicable today. They voted to put an end to net neutrality.
Absolutely despicable, folks.
This is the rule that says everyone gets equal access to the internet. A big company or somebody selling crocheted owls from their house in the Midwest. Now, as long as they tell us they're doing it now, internet service providers will be allowed to slow down or block web traffic to any website or streaming service they like, which benefits...
It's going to be a total nightmare, folks.
...benefits the big telecom companies and does the opposite for all of us. They did this even though 83% of Americans support net neutrality, and 2 million of the people who supposedly...
And the majority is never wrong, right, guys?
Oh, you absolutely suck!
...wrote to the FCC to oppose net neutrality were bogus. Many of them turned out to be dead people.
All right, and so it's 4 years later, and now instead of having problems like not being able to access Netflix, not being able to post a picture of your dinner on Instagram or whatever, now people have the opposite problem. People are complaining that there are too many streaming services to pick from. So much so that, like, if you get all the streaming services, if you get Netflix and HBO and Disney Plus and Hulu, Paramount Plus, Peacock, Amazon Prime, I think I just listed off 7 right there. If you get all of those and combine that with your internet costs, you're probably paying more than you did for cable 10 years ago. So are you really cutting your cord, you guys? But more importantly, what I find fascinating about this, because I've often thought that I should not try to make the whataboutism argument, and I try not to, but then when thinking about net neutrality last night, because I made a joke which was a whataboutism argument, I said, 4 years ago they were saying, oh, but we can't let ISPs, stop you from accessing your favorite streaming service. And now 4 years later, many of these same net neutrality knuckleheads are some of the same people who want to force you to wrap cloth around your mouth before you walk into a Home Depot and try to buy overpriced lumber that they have tariffed the shit out of. And so I think it can be easy to play the whataboutism game, but I was thinking maybe whataboutisms, they're not necessarily bad, but what they should be used for is to articulate principles. Because one thing that was unique about the whole net neutrality repeal hysteria was that a lot of people were arguing in favor of net neutrality based on access to markets. It was kind of a package deal, equal access to all of the same websites. Everyone has a level playing field on the internet, but also they were arguing under the pretense of free markets that ISP should not be able to throttle small businesses who are trying to compete with the big tech giants like Google and Apple and Amazon. We shouldn't let ISPs be playing favorites. We shouldn't be letting ISPs deny consumers the businesses that they want to consume from. People were talking as if consumers had this inalienable right from their internet service providers to watch, to binge Game of Thrones or to catch up on Stranger Things or whatever the hell people are watching these days. So I'm wondering, okay, let's run with this. It's the wrong premise if, this pretense of arguing in favor of markets on net neutrality. But let's run with this. You think it's bad for powerful institutions like ISPs? Let's run with this. You don't want them playing favorites. You don't want them denying consumers access to certain businesses. Let's run with this. Where are all of these same net neutrality knuckleheads when it comes to things like climate change policy, which now the Biden administration is offering tax credits, tax incentives to electric vehicle manufacturers? But only the ones that employ organized union labor. You often hear from Democrat politicians that climate change is this big fucking emergency that we all got to make sacrifices for. But apparently when it comes to their policy, apparently climate change isn't going to happen so long as we give favors to unions.
Oh, you absolutely suck!
But then you can go down the road. The fact that the state of California is now going to ban gas-powered vehicles, or that they're in the middle of shutting down the Diablo Canyon nuclear power plant, the last operating nuclear power plant in the state of California, which is going to drive electricity prices up for consumers in California. They continue to be hostile toward fossil fuels. Gavin Newsom has taken steps to phase out fossil fuel production in California. He has signed laws banning the sale of gas-powered vehicles in 2035. I remember reading a couple weeks ago about how how California is going to ban gas-powered leaf blowers. So all of this is going to result in higher electricity costs, and also the continued mandates, this continued stress of switching to solar and wind, unreliable energy, more expensive forms of energy. Meanwhile, you have the LA Times writing op-eds defending this madness, saying that we should not look to nuclear power as an alternative to fossil fuel energy. That's odd. I keep getting told this is a fucking emergency, yet we can't consider the most reliable alternative to fossil fuel energy because we just got to double down on solar and wind.
Oh, you absolutely suck!
And so all of this madness, it makes it more expensive for people to fuel their cars, to drive to brick and mortar businesses. But even on the topic of net neutrality, if you're going to raise electricity costs for consumers, wouldn't that make it more expensive for people to access their YouTube videos, make it more difficult for people to binge things like Game of Thrones and Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul and Rick and Morty? Doesn't this hostility toward fossil fuel energy and nuclear energy, doesn't it have the same effect as net neutrality?
Really makes you think.
Yet you don't see the Jimmy Kimmels and the Phil DeFrancos of the world freaking out, urging people to write their representatives, write their local politicians to stop this madness. And that's just scratching the surface. I mean, stuff like fossil fuel energy is a lot more important. Being able to power your house, cool your home in the middle of a heat wave or heat your home in the middle of a blizzard, being able to fill up your gas tank to go to work, being able to have reliable energy for people to move goods and services on. That's much more important than being able to catch up on orange is the new black.
That's just not smart.
And then you can really just keep going and going. What about the AB5 law that passed in California? You want to talk about access to the internet? Sure, yeah, but we want people to have faster internet access to businesses like Uber and Lyft. But we also want to make it difficult for people to find work by making Uber and Lyft's business model illegal. We want to make it more expensive. We want to make fares for Uber and Lyft more expensive by forcing these companies to classify their drivers as employees.
That's just not smart.
And this shit happens, and you don't see the Phil DeFrancos and the Ro Khannas of the world shrieking about this. Even with electricity power, I think even New York State is starting to phase out some nuclear and natural gas power plants. But you don't see the Ro Khannas of the world making a big fuss about this. Same with housing in California. We have these environmental laws, zoning laws that make it difficult, if not impossible. So if a developer wants to build a new project, they want to build a new project that might make housing more affordable to people in California. First, they have to go through all the environmental reviews, and even if they succeed, they might get sued into oblivion by the pressure groups like construction unions and environmental groups and NIMBYs. Not to mention their material costs are through the roof because of tariffs on lumber, tariffs on steel, which I guess are going away soon, but still, the tariffs on lumber are not helping. Tariffs on lumber that are coming from Canada, which we apparently need to impose to stick it to China, because apparently the only thing that Americans import is cheap plastic crap from China.
Oh, you absolutely suck!
But Biden is continuing some of the policies of Trump on tariffs and Buy American. This stuff's more important than being able to stream Fortnite on Twitch, which I'm a fan of doing, by the way, clearly. So yeah, the state wants to shut down a nuclear power plant. What's the big deal? What's the big deal? It might just result in your utility bills going up. They want to make it more expensive for you to drive to brick and mortars, want to make it more expensive for you to buy gasoline, purchase vehicles. They want to lock out an entire category of vehicles from the state of California. What's the big deal? Who cares? They want to make it more expensive for you to cool your house during a heat wave or heat your home during a blizzard. What's the big fucking deal? You don't see much shrieking. They want to make it harder for you to find work. They want to make it harder for you, more expensive to find clean water with the way they prevent desalination plants from coming to the market. What's the big deal? They want to make it impossible for you to afford housing on less than 30% of your income. What's the big deal? But holy shit, if an internet service provider tries to charge you a little more to binge Game of Thrones, well, this is the end of the fucking internet as we know it, and you need to call your congressperson, you need to call your representative, you need to take to the streets, you need to write to Ajit Pai because everything's about to get worse because net neutrality got repealed.
Blow it out your ass.
So I guess this is where whataboutism can be helpful, because it's like, listen, if you really want to provide consumers with more options, do you really want to prevent large institutions from playing favorites on the market? If you want people to have greater access to goods and services they want to buy, then why are you not calling to free up the economy, free up the market? Even worse, many of these same knuckleheads demand more controls, more restrictions, especially with what we saw with the port debacle in California. People are saying, just suck it up. Maybe shop less. Maybe buy American. See that coming from the right? Not that the right is good on net neutrality. The right actually likes net neutrality in principle. They're not opposed to net neutrality. They just think it should be applied to social media companies. I remember reading about this last year. Chris Sacca, who's one of these billionaires, he's been on Shark Tank a few times. He wrote, 15 years ago, I co-led a team trying to give 100% free internet access to all of San Francisco, starting with the poorest neighborhoods first. The network would be anonymous with no ads, no cookies, etc. Approximately a $20 to $25 million gift. The result, we were chased out of town.
No surprise there.
And he did a whole thread about this, but if you're really a big believer in internet access to the point that we need net neutrality laws to make sure no one gets throttled, we had this billionaire apparently trying to give everyone in San Francisco free internet, and the city essentially stepped in and said no. Once San Francisco supervisor told us she would vote against it unless we promised to fund quarterly field trips to the zoo for the kids in her district. So it sounded like someone wanted some political favors.
No surprise there.
Where was all this shrieking by the net neutrality knuckleheads? One soup rejected it because poor people needed training to use the net.
Oh, you absolutely suck!
Countless low, no-income residents spoke at hearings about how they had computers and knew how to use the web but could not afford Comcast. Soups mansplained back to those very people that they were wrong. But apparently the repeal of net neutrality is the problem, you guys. Not to mention the slew of local regulations in places like California, like their San Francisco, I think, is trying to phase the reliance on gas heated homes out of existence. They're making it illegal for new buildings to build with natural gas lines. You know, if the federal government wants to impose tariffs on other countries on stuff you might want to buy new appliances that come from South Korea, lumber from Canada. But no one has a problem when you don't really see much shrieking about import taxes that Americans have to pay more for, that businesses have to pay more for. But holy shit, if an ISP wants you to pay a little more for broadband, it's the end of the fucking internet. The FDA is another issue where, if you want a vaccine, if you want to try a new vaccine, well, whoa, buddy, you got to get permission from the bureaucrats at the FDA first, even though it's been proven safe. We got to make sure it's efficacious. Can't have you dumb peasants making decisions on your own health, even if you're in a high-risk category for coronavirus, still going on and on. If you want monoclonal antibody treatment, apparently you need permission from government bureaucrats. If you want to try this new Pfizer COVID bill, you need to wait for permission from FDA bureaucrats. So if the concern over like things like access to markets, if that was the overriding principle of the net neutrality debate, then I would ask people, why are you not as passionate about other areas where government restricts access, where government plays favors, where government makes it more expensive for you to engage in commerce? And it's most likely the case that the people who claim to be for net neutrality on the pretense of markets don't really give that much of a shit, and it's just another excuse for them to regulate big tech monopolies.